Hey everybody, it's me, Robert. I don't particularly have another review for you right now, but today I want to talk about another story and my thoughts on a particular story. I'm sure all of you have heard of the great author William Shakespeare, a man who, by many people's standards, wrote the most beautiful love story of all time, Romeo and Juliet. If any of you are college or high school students, you know that you're going to have to read that at some point. And just for a quick refresher, Romeo and Juliet is about a story about two warring houses, the Capulets and the Montague. These people were blood enemies to each other. They were such bad enemies, they didn't even know why they hate each other. They would kill each other on the streets for no reason. Whoever's house, if you were a member of that house, then you were expected to kill the other members of the Montagues, or the Capulets, because they were both princes of Verona. And in this house, Prince Montague and Prince Capulet Montague had a son named Romeo, and Prince Capulet had a daughter named Juliet. And despite all their odds, the two of these two people fall madly in love with each other. And they are, and all within a moment of one meeting, about a wonderful story about a boy at a party who fell in love at first sight of a woman he loved. Sounds like a wonderful love story. And as you know, William Shakespeare is remembered mostly for his wonderful language. After they find out who each other is, they go on to speak to each other under a balcony about how much they loved each other and how they could not live without the other. Now, as the story goes, here is some of the text from that. O Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I will no longer be a Capulet. And Romeo replies to her, shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this? I am of the opinion that this man wrote a wonderful book. I am of the opinion that it is some of the greatest literature and most beautiful words you could ever hear. Because at the end of this book, they are just not meant to be. They die by each other's hands to try and save each other. I am also of the opinion of this wonderful story that it is probably the second greatest love story of all time. The first one would have to be in here. There is a story of another man, and at this point he was a man, named Jesus of Nazareth, of Israel, who was actually not of this earth. He was from a place far greater, far more beautiful than this wretched world. And he came here to save the one things that he cared most about: his people. And for his people, he calmed the storm. He healed the blind. He raised his friends. He did not abandon his people. To hear the words of that wonderful and most beloved King, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? I thirst. It is finished. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. My idea of this story is it is far grander than that of even the great works and imagination of William Shakespeare, who imagined a magnificent story of love. I just think that God's story was written much better, much more selfless. And how my heart moves for both. But for the person who got nothing out of it, who still to this day probably does not get anything out of it, I have to give it to the second story, who at the end of the story both people die, but Romeo and Juliet only died for one person. And I am so grateful that more than one person will be there. This may not have been a devotional you like. I just noticed the similarities between two great love stories. So thank you for your time. And think about these great love stories. And you can tell me this isn't a love story, but I wouldn't believe you. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.